Life is hectic, demanding, and doesn't stop. When honest with ourselves, we must confess we often don't know what the hell we're doing. The Larkcast is an ongoing conversation about the inclusive and mischievous nature of God's presence through the lens of all the things that make up this phenomenon we refer to as life. Astonishing grace and refreshing honesty collide right here for your weekly encouragement.
Welcome back to the Larkcast. My name's Tony, and with me is Russ. Hello, Russ.
What is up, my man?
How you doing today?
Good. I'm doing good, man.
Nice, man. You know, I found out recently, and I did not find this out from you, but I found out from Krista, just going back and forth with her, on Instagram, as I do with my friends, that you and I had the same summer album this year.
Yeah.
That new Post Malone, which is interesting for me because I'm usually not like a pop, guy. I get into it a little bit more just by way of my kids. Well, Anna in particular, my 14-year-old. But every once in a while, I'll allow myself to get into a pop album. And Austin, the album, definitely was mine this year, and it was yours as well.
That was your jam, man.
It was.
Yeah, I like you, I don't really listen to pop music. I couldn't tell you who anybody was. And truth be told, it's my wife who's addicted to Post Malone now. She never listened to his music before, but this new album comes out and it's like the same album is playing in my house every day. I mean, like every single day. And it's the whole album, and then it starts over. And I have an office at the back of our house, so I'm like, man, what is going on with this like same thing on repeat? And I find out it's this new Post Malone album, and it's different than other albums that he's done, and it's got this like cool like kind of 80s vibe to it. I feel like I don't like all the songs, but there's like a chunk of them in there that I'm like, I really dig this.
Oh, there's some bangers on there.
Yeah, man. And so yeah, we have a kind of a joke in the house here. I'm like, Eli, it's noon. He's like, I know. And we haven't listened to the Post Malone album 4 times yet, Dad. I feel like we're and so, yeah, oh man. But yeah, it's been fun, man. Some of those songs.
You hear it all over the commercials, so it's definitely, like in rotation commercially. But I really like the first song. You can definitely tell he's more tapping into that, more of a country, kind of vibe there. And what's funny is like the knock on him culturally is that he used rap to become popular, and then he kind of like switched. And so he's getting blamed. He's getting canceled.
What?
Cultural appropriation. And I found this out from yes, dude. Yes. Which is funny because you can tell like the people who are saying that only listen to the first song, because from there he pretty much is in the same vein of the poppy, pop rap stuff that he's been doing. And I'm like, did these people not listen to the rest of this album? Like Parker, this dude that works in my office, we're like, this is basically like what he's been doing, like the rest of this album. It's just that first song has that,
different
that
sound to it.
Yeah. And so it's just, to me, it's just like, it's just so funny. Silly, really, is what it is.
Yeah. It's in doing study on just the human psyche and human culture, especially over the last 5, 6 years. They say that at its core, the whole cancel culture thing comes down to whether it's going in any direction. Because just to be clear, right, you find it everywhere. Some people were like, they attribute it to like a certain political party or only certain types of people or certain income brackets, and it's just not true. It's everywhere, and it can be aimed at anything. But at its core is it's ultimately a power play. If you want to feel power, aka control, whether it's in something as small as in a relationship with one person to as broad as a political movement, if you want to have power, then you need a problem. It really just comes down to that. So anytime you can problematize something,
Love that word.
you can sort of, that's where you can infiltrate your position and begin to create the us them dichotomy. And if you can attach some type of a moral breakdown to the other party, especially like if in the new moral, in the new morals of today, you can ultimately begin to gain power in that scene. So that's what cancel culture comes down to, ultimately just a power play. And we've seen that play out.
Yes.
In ways that go beyond Post Malone or, what you watch on the news, all the way down to feeling it personally. Because our audience doesn't know this, maybe other than maybe just a handful of people. But we got canceled.
We did.
Like Lark got
canceled.
Got canceled, dude.
And that's what we're getting into today. We're doing a little storytelling today. Letting everyone in on something that's kind of been happening behind the scenes for a hot minute. And it's going to be, we're telling this story today for not to get back at anyone, not to be vindictive, but to encourage, because we know that if you're listening to the Larkcast, chances are there's something in this story that's going to relate to you and connect with you.
Yeah, I have found storytelling as an art is a lost art, I feel like, in a lot of ways, which is sad because it's in the telling of our stories, like our actual stories, the true stories about us. Wherever those stories are welcomed, not just tolerated, when you can tell them without fear or fault finding, I guess you could say, healing takes place. And as people begin to participate in that, healing starts to actually happen around, right? And among everybody that's within that conversation. Dr. Thompson's got some really killer research on that. And of course, you can find that at play and how it works. And then it's like right there in the scriptures, we see this beautiful storytelling, this gospel news that there's no need to hide anymore. So for me, we've been hanging on to this, man, for about 6 months now. And there's some hurt and there's pain and there's doubt and there's frustration. There's anger. It all gets mixed in there. And I just thought, you know what? There's a broader audience out here, man, that deals with these similar things. And maybe it'd be good for us to just hop on here and tell the story.
Yeah.
And just say to people like, hey, here's what's happening within the world of Lark, and glad you're here. But more importantly, you're not alone if this is you.
Yeah. So let's get into it, man.
Yeah. And we're not alone, which I think is easy to forget. It's easy to forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the story is this. I won't belabor it. We've been a part of we've done work with various churches. People, if you're listening to the Larkcast and you're new, I used to pastor and plant churches in Asheville, North Carolina, and later in the city of Chicago prior to stepping into what is now Lark, starting this. Tony also was a part of pastor planting churches in Northwest Indiana, right outside of Chicago. That's our background. And part of my background in planting was I had different denominations that wanted to work with me. They're like, hey, man, you seem to be tapping into seeing new church families form among the outside and uninterested. And that's our target audience. And that's the fastest growing movement of people actually in America, by the way, is the nuns, the outside, the uninterested. And we'd love to get in your corner, right? We'd love to do some work with you on this. And so I began working with an organization called the Missionary Church. Denomination also goes by the name Generate, and made some friends there 17 years ago, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Thought about that last night. 17 years ago. And
it's a long time.
Yeah, there's a guy named Bob. We'll just call him Bob. Anybody who knows that world knows who Bob is. But Bob would be a gem in that world. Bob was a dear, dear, dear friend. A guy who walks into a room and looks like a retired dentist. And not the guy that you would think would be so involved in so many different movements of good news, but really just always got in my corner and said, man, how can I help you? And I said, look, man, there's some admin support I could use, some organizational stuff, some funding that we could really use to try to get good news out, the podcast out, writings out, traveling. And he's like, I'm in. And so anyhow, that's been part of our story. And I know you got connected there as well with ordination status with these guys.
I met you in 2014 and started getting introduced to them. Like right around, that time. At first I was pretty leery because I was leaving. I thought I was leaving like, the institution, being on staff at a church, like a mega church, multi-campus, kind of a situation. And I was like, yeah, dude, like, let's do this, Lark thing. At the time it was Table Network, and we, rebranded to be Lark in 2020. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. And you're like, yeah, man, like, you started talking about this, missionary church denomination that was, backing us. And we talked about, getting credentialed with them. And I was like, whoa, dude. I was like, what? And you're like, no, dude, like these guys like have our back. They get what we're doing. They're supporting us. And honestly, it was that for a good long while.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Jameson as well, and other people within Lark, man, that they were able to help provide some funding channels, toward what we do, some credential ordination status, for us in regards to things that, ministry wise in the US, legalities that they were able to provide. And it was a really good partnership for a good long while, man. And we were different, but it was always welcomed. That was one thing I loved about Bob, is like, as long as it was about the spread of good news and people finding life in Jesus, and then those people helping others find life, he's like, I'm in. It was that simple. And but as we continue to do ministry, man, there's basically like a movement of the more fundamental crowd within that world. Pretty fundamental, like in all regards. I mean, you're talking about the kind of dudes that dress like State Farm agents on their day off, just so they can maintain the I'm a pastor look.
It's a lot of golf polos and khakis, basically, is what it is.
Yeah, we're not picking on dress, just to be clear. I think as much as we're saying, like, well, for me, it's more like, hey, dude, it's Saturday. You're at a cookout. And so there's this sort of fundamental group, man, within that has just always hated what we were saying and what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I think what it just came down to is the more we continue to tap into a world that's outside and uninterested in what has become church, and we don't blame them for this, People are finding freedom, man. They start passing on good news. They start passing on to their friends what they're learning about Jesus, and more people start to find the freedom to go step into this way of friendship that we
Mm-hmm.
find in Jesus. And that way of life, that way of faith, that way of discipleship is outside of this institution that was created in the name of church.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it eventually affects the bottom line, man.
Yeah.
It eventually affects the bottom line. And what I mean by that is money. Money and power kind of go hand in hand. And you have to have them if the institution that you're a part of and running is self-preserving in nature,
Mm-hmm.
which is what institutions are.
Mm-hmm.
And so back in March, I was teaching a message at the sanctuary over across the state. And in this message, I was unpacking something that we have got right in Reclaim chapter 1, something we've been teaching and writing and talking about for freaking like 8 years, 9 years.
Some of the
So
stuff that we were teaching at conferences and workshops and things that
yes.
they supported in and among their crowd.
Yeah, so this hasn't gone anywhere. And in this teaching, apparently somebody from the fundamental ranks recorded it illegally because it's copyrighted information, but they didn't care, I guess, so they downloaded it. And then they went, instead of contacting me, as the scriptures would teach, we're like, if you have an issue with your brother, I think it was Jesus who said, you should probably just go to him.
Let's go to him.
Yeah. But instead of doing that, they proceeded to spread this message throughout their ranks and call for my head. He's a heretic. We've got to get rid of this guy. And so you've kind of got Bob in the mix who's going, what are you guys talking about? Russ is not a heretic, and he's been teaching this for years. And he can show you right in the scriptures what he's saying. And the guy quoted passages throughout what he was saying. So, what's the pushback? And they basically just took that thing all the way to the top of the pyramid there, man, behind closed doors. And like, man, you either cancel this dude or we're all leaving and taking our money with us.
Mm.
And then I come to find out that there's people at the top of the pyramid who are like, okay, I guess this is what we need to do. And then I get to go through this rigmarole with other leaders within, my region and the denomination. And you've got guys who are like, man, I'm with you, brother. I know you're not a heretic, man. We just need to meet and kind of clear up some things here. And eventually, I guess the pressure, man, the fear, the loss of money, title, something played into it, man. But these guys all just jumped on board, and within a very short window, dude, it was, you're done.
Yeah, well, it was a kangaroo court. It was something I'm not, because this can sound bad, but when you've already made up your mind that someone needs to go and the reasons are already decided, predetermined, and you have a crowd that has a lot of leverage within an institution wants you gone,
Mm-hmm.
they're just gonna just go through the motion and call it due process just so that they don't look like idiots.
Yeah.
And there was never a desire to understand.
Yeah. Yeah, at first it was almost kind of like, man, this approach to ministry is just something we need to kind of cancel. But they were still interested in, us being a part, connected in a broader sense. But then I guess there was one guy in the midst who raised his hand in one of their meetings with, hey, we're trying to cut them out for this one reason, but we don't have biblical grounds for removing like their credentials, their ordination status with us. So what did he actually do wrong? And instead of embracing that, like, well, damn, maybe he didn't do anything illegal and unethical or immoral. crap. Instead of like seeing that and leaning in, they were like scrambling to find something they could use to
Yeah.
cancel this like altogether, as in like booted out of the club. And that's when I was like, oh shit, dude, look at here, man.
Mm-hmm.
Look at this power play. And you got, well, I guess, and everybody sort of, starts to play a role in that. And I felt bad for Bob, who's always been in our corner, because he seems to be the guy who's trying to bring people together for the spread of good news. And now he's just kind of finding himself kind of hogtied. But that's just me speculating, to be clear. But it just came down to we got canceled, bro. And because you lead this with me as well as Jameson, the sites were quickly turned to, well, what are Jameson and Tony believing and teaching? And so then they started going through podcast. And then I guess some of those dudes picked up a book that we've had out for like 8 years where we've been saying this. And eventually, man, the gauntlet came down, man, on all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So support, some of the admin support, ordination support, friendships, man, it all done.
Yeah, it's like people that you could just, you consider them friends,
Mm-hmm.
people that would be, you could be quick to text them, felt loved and supported by them.
Yeah.
Like quickly got caught up in the politics of it and distanced themselves. And I think even though I've known this crew for, a while, I think even more so. And I know um that it stung and hurt you, more than anything that I felt. And so I think going through it, I think you took the brunt of it, and just
Mm.
in terms of the relational fallout, and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. It's it is bothersome. Probably vacillate, man, between the anger, right? And the hurt.
Yeah, man. I mean, I experienced something, pretty similar moving away from, this church I was a part of since second grade, you know, kind of came alive in Jesus when I was 20. I was kind of like the black sheep, came on
Yeah.
staff. You're like this darling of the church, so to speak. And then all of a sudden you just started kind of like questioning, things and starting to see, spirituality in the West. And I was just getting honest about how I spend my time. And I'm like, from, early on in my journey, I always had a heart for those who just were in the back row. Someone's only, at a church service because they're trying to appease their mom or their girlfriend or boyfriend or like whatever, or people who would just never walk through the doors of a church at all. And I'm like, dude, I'm spending all my time preparing for a thing that the people who I really care about are never going to come to. And my livelihood is attached to that.
Yeah.
And so I'd felt pains like that in the past, but never more intensely than right around the time that I met you. And I had to make a hard decision. We were pretty much entrenched in the church world. Not only, you know, by what you believe, but, culturally. So all the friendships and everything. And it's like, man, if I really care for these people, I need to find a new way of spending my time, and I need to find a new way of supporting my family.
Yeah.
And when that was communicated, it was not understood. It was not understood. And I was not cared for. It just pretty much became like a corporate exchange of someone just kind of, saying, hey, I don't want to work here anymore. And you were just systematically just, sent on your way. And so, but I still live in the same community that I pastored in. And so it's just wild because people can't help but talk, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and create stories around things. And, you know, the the real truth of, why I was leaving in the first place got misconstrued. And so where it was like normally when you would see someone out in public, it was like, oh man, like, hey, Pastor Tony, everyone's all eager to see you and say hey and all that. And then all of a sudden just a few people get talking. And yeah, eventually you're just labeled and forgotten.
Yeah. Mm. That's probably the clearest way I've ever heard it put.
And
Labeled
that's
and
it.
forgotten.
And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like when you talk about like money and metrics and those kinds of things, um, yeah, you're just gonna get thrown onto the heap of bodies outside of it that don't benefit the
Yeah.
institution.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, I've got brothers, man, within the ranks of that organization I was referring to earlier that all that went down, dude, and have not heard one peep in six
Mm-hmm.
months. I was talking to a counselor about this, and they referenced it like death.
Hmm.
They said you have to almost kind of embrace this idea that what you're going through is like it's like death. Like
Hmm.
someone, these people that you cared about died.
Hmm.
They're gone. The relationship, the friendship, like even you reaching out to them, them not calling back. Like it's like it's like they died. And I was like, oh, I never like thought about it that way, man.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this isn't like new news, to be clear, right? I mean, we've got local churches to the broader workings of denominations that have been doing this for 1700 years, man. It's like you take something as beautiful as the church's identity, it being a name given to anyone and everyone, all the failures and fakes in the world, man, who are just saying yes to Jesus and learning to trust him.
Hmm.
You are the church. You are a random sampling of the broken world that's learning to trust in God's boundless love.
Mm-hmm.
That is the church right where you are. And you take something as beautiful as that, and it's something as freeing as that. And the minute you begin to say, no, man, we've got to create structures and hierarchies because we've got this thing that we have to build, and therefore we have this thing that we have to protect. And it just all goes downhill from there. It always has. So we're not, this isn't something new, I guess is what I'm saying. However, still just as hurtful,
Yeah.
and it's still
And
just as sad.
yeah. And I think we could be honest about that. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are listening who have experienced, um, something similar. The institution really doesn't know how to care for you if you don't benefit them.
Yeah.
And, you quickly, if it was presented to you like that when you first got into ministry, that like, hey, listen, if you step into this world, you are going to constantly have to only care about the people that are here and benefit this place
Yeah.
and benefit this mission. And so because it's so intense, the amount of people who are coming, I don't care if you have a church of 100 or 1,000, or if you have a denomination of, 100 churches or 2,000 churches, your love becomes conditional and
Yeah.
narrowly focused.
Yeah.
It's you have to do it. You have no time to, especially as a leader who's trying to be a good leader, like how all the leadership books and podcasts and, here's how to maximize yourself, here's how to really like build an organization, here's really how to, be fruitful. All of it is just finding people who are faithful, available, and teachable, and who will give their time, talents, and treasures
Mm.
to benefit the bottom line. And I think that there's something very unique about being a friend in this world with no strings attached. To where expectations get thrown out the window, to where love and friendship is the long game, and you stick around regardless of outcomes.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not someone behaves in a certain way or hits certain marks, on their way up to being a fully devoted follower of Jesus Christ, or, a good
Yeah.
denominational member, or something like that. It's Love is very short in those worlds because there's a massive string attached. And so there is something about the way we've discovered the grace of God, the love of God, and the freedom in the life of those who grab onto this that allows us to be those kinds of friends.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to give my life to.
Yes. 100%. 100%. That was me. That was me in Chicago. The church was doing well, growing, multiplying, hitting all those metrics. But all the while, I'm going, dude, I've got a heart for all these neighbors. My house is full of them, but none of them have any desire in going to this machine that we're growing down the road here.
Right.
And I'm over here preaching this good news, and I'm teaching people about how Jesus went about his ministry when he walked the earth of discipling people through friendships with no strings attached.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I don't have the time to do this.
Right.
And I had a handful of people around me who were like-minded in you that were seeing this and had a heart for this, and they had no time for it. So it's kind of funny when you think about it. Like, this whole ministry was started out of a desire to just get back to the simplicity of that very way of Jesus among people,
Mm-hmm.
and the beauty and the value of that. And you basically go upstream from there. You know what I'm saying?
Upstream.
Yeah, you move upstream in the sense of, like, you're downstream here, and let's say you're fishing downstream, and then you realize like where all this is coming about, and what if you really want to meet this thing where it's happening, you got to go upstream.
Hmm.
And so I began moving upstream and finding just really rediscovering
Hmm.
what God is really like through what Jesus really said and really did. And it was the moving upstream that allowed me to see, like, holy cow, it's 90% what we believe and about 10% what we're actually doing. And you start to see this beautiful value of grabbing onto the rethinking, the repenting, you could say, of all
Mm-hmm.
these false ideas of God, of life, of what faith actually is, of what discipleship in church is, and just really started grabbing onto that, which set me free to go live into this.
Mm-hmm.
And then all I was doing is just helping other people who had a heart to spend their time with the neighbors with no strings attached grab
Mm-hmm.
on to this actual good news.
Mm-hmm.
So they were free to go live into this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found that that's actually where the breakdown happened with this, why we got canceled. The first inclination of what they were bothered by was how we were going about this and how we were freeing people up for it. But what we got canceled for is what we were teaching about what Jesus is really like and what God really did, that sets people free for this way of life.
Yeah.
that's where it's like, whoa. And so ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is our heart for people eventually makes a serious rub against the improvement theology that you find, the religion that you find throughout the world.
Yeah.
Because the improvement theology, the idea that God, that progress is needed and possible.
Promise.
Okay? Yeah. So like that idea, it that improvement theology, okay, when that is your view of God and life and who we need to become, that turns the church into an improvement center.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why and then from there is where we create all the structures and the hierarchies. That's where all the politics comes in. That's where all the metrics come in, all of it. And so it's like Lark was so centered on, yes, we want to go live into this simple way of friendship, but we know that ultimately it's what we're believing about God that has to shift, that's ever going to allow us to go live into that way of freedom,
Mm-hmm.
to ever go be the friend that you're talking about with no strings attached.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to tackle the improvement theology, man, and grab onto the replacement theology, which we talk a lot about in Reclaim. Can't get into it all here, but that's the rub, man, and it will always be the rub. And I think it was Jesus who was pretty explicit. Like, they hated me, they're gonna hate you.
Yeah, I think one of my discoveries in the John series is that when Jesus uses the word world, um, I always thought of like, oh, this word world is strictly referring to people who are outside the church.
Mm,
But in John's gospel, Jesus constantly refers to the world, the way it thinks, um, the way it cancels, the way it hates. The world, he was talking about the Pharisees, man.
yes, yes.
And you come to find out world is not, you know, necessarily strictly this, like, you know, pagan, unchristian, you know, um camp, but
Mm-hmm.
really this idea that spreads among those who long to be in control, are in control, money, power, politics, you know, all those kinds of things. And it has a variety of faces. It has a religious face, it has religious faces. Um, and he calls it like the thinking of the world, the way of the world.
Yep.
Um, and so yeah, we didn't
Mm.
we didn't fit the bill.
No, no, when you're
We got canceled and we got booted.
yeah. And it's so funny, man, because I'm talking with these guys about this and we're working through it. And at first, you kind of watch the same knee jerk reactions. You know, it kind of reminded me of that Rise and Fall of Mars Hill podcast that was so popular.
Hmm.
Right. So there's the focus is immediately on like, why, Russ? Why, guys? And everybody's like gathered around the table. All right, let's talk about why there's a fly in the meth lab. And then there's all these conversations about leadership and structure and the need for these things and what counts as church and what doesn't. You know what I mean? And it's all centered around trying to figure out how a fly got into the meth lab and all the policies and procedures that we can put in place to prevent the fly from getting into the meth lab. And is there a way to bridge this for you guys to change what you're doing and your approach so that you can get on board with more of this plan that we have to prevent flies from getting in the meth lab? And I'm kind of the guy in the room who's going, hey, has anybody ever wondered why there's a meth lab here? That's what Lark's that's what we're doing here.
Does anyone stop to wonder why we've created people so dependent upon us that they've never ever left to go explore the beautiful invitation that's
Yeah.
given to us in the scriptures to be in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, if somebody came to your town and was advertising a class, a seminar on how to help your grown children get out of your basement and go live their lives. And then you found out that the person who was leading this seminar has a house full of their grown children living in their basement. You would be questioning the validity of that conference and if maybe you should be listening to what this guy's saying.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm looking at the church world, and I'm like, we're priding ourselves on our ability to keep people forever. So and so has been so faithful, man, just been a leader here, a member here for 50 years. And I'm going, I thought maturity was their ability to leave here and go live their life loving on and discipling the people in and around them in good news. The metric's backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've got it's a supervised injection site, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're feeding a religious addiction and then priding ourselves on our ability to keep people addicted.
Yeah. And what's wild to me is like, as I brush up against it and the mindset, because, we've interacted, we've met a lot of people, still have some friendships, and they're always like inviting us, back in, man, you got to come back to the church, or like we've seen people like, drift back, into like Sundays and the programs and stuff like that. They're like, yeah, man, we were just like really missing God's presence,
Oh,
and
that's so sad.
Subtly, without saying it, but when you say it this bluntly, you see the error in it. It's really what they're saying is that God dwells in places made of human hands.
Yes.
It's what they're saying.
Yeah. The whole idea that you ever thought that there was a second of your life that you were outside of God's presence. Okay. That whole mentality, that's what leads to the improvement theology.
Mm-hmm.
That's what turns the church from a movement of everyday people passing on good news into improvement centers that you need to be a part of.
Mm-hmm.
That's perpetuating a false understanding of God and his presence in and among people.
Yep.
And man, you just watch it like almost like a hamster wheel. You know what I mean? Sometimes I feel like, because somebody, just this past week, somebody said, man, I know you guys are all about the spread of good news. Lark exists to help people see and keep seeing Jesus for who he really is, man. So they can really learn to live free, to go live into the way of friendship, to pass on good news, to see other people come alive. Yes, yes, yes. Amen. So why do you guys take the time to equip and empower a different understanding of church then? Why not just keep it centered on just, you know what I mean, the discipleship in the good news? And I'm like, it's for what you just brought up, Tony. Because people start to grab onto and live into this. And then they get hit with the people around them who carry a false understanding of God and church, calling them back into this machine.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like churches work like mainstream news channels. You feel ill-informed. You feel ill-informed if you don't plug in, but then you're misinformed if you do. And you just go right back into this hamster wheel. And I'm like, guys, we're not harping on this because we're angry about it. Mm-hmm. We're teaching on this so that people can find the freedom, man, to go live into this, so that when they get canceled the way we do, they can look into the face of Jesus who loves them and is present in and among them. They can know that they're loved, they're whole, they're home, they're already free. God's presence is fully with them wherever they are. And they can start to find some joy, man, and just stepping out into the real world and being a friend who helps others live free.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to get canceled from the religious crowd when you do this.
Yes.
There's no way around it.
There's no way around it. And
so let me just say thank you to our audience for indulging us in our counseling public session. counseling is in counseling probably one another here.
Yeah.
Hearing us share some hurts and frustrations, but just know this is the way of religion. It always has been and always will be. The good news is it doesn't have to be our story. And it doesn't have to be the story that defines us. We get to walk forward with freedom and a skip in our step and just keep right on rocking and rolling. Yeah. Now, we did take a hit. We did lose a lot of financial support. And so I just want to say a big shout out to all those who have been given to the movement of Lark and empowering the spread of good news to see more people find and live into freedom. Thank you. Seriously, thank you.
Yes.
And invite new people to come jump in. Go to larksite.com and join us. We got a lot of good news to get out, man.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody thought this was going to set us a step back, I think they're going to be a little surprised. If it's done anything, it's just motivated us for a heart for more.
Mm-hmm. Amen, man.
Amen.
And if you're wondering where we're going next, in the vein of trying to encourage this life of freedom, we're going to be diving into the book of Galatians starting next week. I know a lot of you have been asking about that. Seems like it was kind of always inevitable to head this direction. We got so much out of going through the Gospel of John, and if there's any book in the New Testament that I think speaks directly to our experience in 2023, as believers who are trying to say yes to Jesus and coming out of institutional temple understandings, theologies with a bunch of people on your back trying to enslave you again and pull you back in. It's probably the book of Galatians.
Amen, man. Amen.
So
until then, it's coming.
Until then, cheers.